welcome Kristen and Jeremy.
Thank you. I do have a loud voice, but please let me know in the back if you're having problems. Do you need me to use the microphone? Or probably. I'm getting a mouth probably. Okay. So, okay, great for the recording, and I've got my little thing on too, so hopefully that's enough. So let me just preface this. I just put some informal surveys on your table, and if you have a moment to just fill that out, that is for me and a committee at my church. If you would feel so led to fill that out, I would really appreciate that, but that is not a requirement, okay? So thank you for your input. We really appreciate it. So my name is Kristen Wonderlich, and I am a voice teacher. I am an operatic singer. I never thought I was a choir director. And what happened to me was my first year at Winthrop, one of my graduate students was getting ready to graduate. And he had a choir, and he asked, I think you should take over my choir for me at this little tiny church. And I said, oh no, I mean, I sing, but I'm not a director. And he said, I think you can handle it. So I spent 10 years with this little church choir of 10 to 15. And in 2019, my dentist called me and said, we have a need at Westminster Church for a choir director. And I knew that church was about 1,000 members. And I said, oh no, I cannot do this. And he said, just come and talk to the pastor. Well, here I am 5 years later. And it's been a real joy for me because I really feel like my teaching in the studio helps my teaching in my choir. I look at teaching my choir like teaching a voice lesson in a corporate setting. But what has been beautiful to me, especially, and I've thought about the words of Chris Ospas from TCU, Dr. Chris Ospas, our choirs are a small congregation feeding the larger congregation. And our choirs should be a reflection of that congregation. And I am blessed with a multi-generational choir. Maybe some of you aren't. But I think too often we discredit the older people in our choirs and say, oh no, this isn't for you anymore. And I think it is. And I think those people feel led to spiritually lead their churches with their voices at whatever level that is. And I have all kinds of levels in my choir, and it's a great blessing for me. So without further ado, I will let Dr. Mims speak for a minute.
So we're passing microphones back and forth. I'm Jeremy. I direct the choirs across the street. I went through it, but then I also get to do church music as well. So I get to do both sides of things, both in academia. But I came to choral music in a different journey. I was a pianist and a violinist who ended up playing for choirs in college and said, oh, I love the wedding of music and text, and fell in love with that. So I came in back door as an instrumentalist and still play the organ and the piano at the church. And I get to also to work with the intergenerational choir, although they are more aging than I'll say that, yeah. So moving back and forth between Winthrop and then Grace, and working with some smaller church choirs, but also very capable. You're going to hear from them tomorrow evening because they're going to sing with Winthrop. So we are connecting people across generations in that regard as well. You're going to hear from me more tomorrow on some choral rehearsal techniques when we begin to discuss someone to present. In this one, she is the expert in the voice, so I'm going to chime in several times, but this is mostly Kristen's wheelhouse for sure.
And I did present this to our South Carolina ACDA conference last fall, so this is just kind of reiteration. I like to use the word maturing and not aging. It's just nicer, right? Or maybe I need to use like vintage, right? Vintage voices. That would be good. And I was an English major in undergrad, so I like alliteration. So making the melody measureless. Okay, so techniques for addressing the maturing voice in your church choir rehearsal. So this whole idea of psychogeromusicology, if we think of musicology, study of music, psychology, study of mind, and specifically with geriatrics, the older singer, okay, and the effects of music on our older population. So this term really became popular in the 90s, and I put a picture of Tom Brady up because, is he too old to play? And since he's retired. But how does one make the remaining years of life meaningful, healthful, and worthwhile? That's the question that we have to answer. And if you would advance that slide. Thank you. So presbyphonia, I'm a good old Presbyterian, that actually means old, okay? So presbyphonia means old voice, maturing voice, vintage voice. I like that. Speech language pathologists need to be your friend. Singing experts, your choir director, your voice teacher, whoever that may be. And even perhaps the acting voice, right? Learning to inflect your voice in healthful ways. So we can advance that slide next. Challenges, the great Leontine Price. She was pushing 60 when she gave her Met farewell of Aida. Go and listen to that. It'll bring you to tears. And she still, in her 90s, is singing beautifully. And so when we hear a 60-year-old tenor develop a wobble, which means slow vibrato, which you probably know, we write it off as getting old and are reluctant or embarrassed to challenge him. Because after all, he cannot help aging. That is from SLP, well-known Robert Sadeloff in Philadelphia. And it's this whole mentality of, well, that's just the way it is. That's where he has to stay. We can't really help him. And I'm here to tell you, we have an obligation to help them. And I believe we can reverse aging processes of the voice. One thing I forgot to tell you is that I have a very good relationship with my pastor, and he can ask me to do anything, and I will nod my head and say yes. And we are blessed at Westminster to have a care facility right across our parking lot that the church built. And he asked me, well, the CEO at Westminster Towers would like you to start a choir for the residents at Westminster Towers. Would you do that? And I said yes. The median age in my choir, it's about 15 to 20 singers, is 87. And here I am teaching. I have a man in my choir who is 101. And so it's a huge blessing for me. Every Saturday, we're starting a new program of show tunes on Saturday. I'm excited about that. So here are some sources, and I have the bad habit of, y'all, this PowerPoint is massive. So if I am saying things too quickly, and plus I'm from the Midwest and we talk fast, I have brought business cards, and if you would like me to send you this PowerPoint afterwards, I will gladly be happy to share this information. But here are some wonderful sources, and I want this to be an encouragement to you, that there are more books talking and addressing the needs of our maturing voices. Karen Brunson at Northwestern University, this is a fabulous book, The Evolving Singing Voice, and it takes you from birth to death and how the voice matures and changes through all of our stages of life. It's amazing. This is a great book. Choral Pedagogy and the Older Singer, Robert Sadeloff, you just saw his name. Brenda Smith. I teach, in the summers, I teach a choral pedagogy course, usually as an independent study to our graduate choral education majors. And this is a great source that I use in that course. Then we have Choral Pedagogy by the same authors, okay, just showing you some of our resources real quickly. And Prescriptions for Choral Excellence by Shirley Emmons. This is a great book too. So there are just a few little sources for you to think about, okay? Here's my mantra from the great Yogi Berra. It ain't over till it's over. The body is resilient, okay? So many effects are reversible. And it can take as little as 10 to 15 minutes a day. So I know to lose my weight, I've got to exercise 30 to 45 minutes a day. That's what the experts tell me to do. Why would I not be doing that for my voice? You can make a commitment of 10 to 15 minutes a day for the good of your voice. So, keys to vocal longevity, and this is from that Prescriptions for Choral Excellence. Attend to the process of healthy voicing, okay? And we'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later. Follow a vocal hygiene protocol, okay? Take care of your body, and that will help care for your voice. You should not be eating a bowl of spaghetti at 9 p.m. because guess what happens? You go to bed, and that acid sits in your stomach, and the prevalence of acid reflux only increases as you age, And that fries the back of your vocal folds, and to put it very, very just on the table like that. Warming up adequately and exercising the voice. I just die at this tenor in my choir because I warm up my choir. I have to do that. And it's always like he has an epiphany, like 4 or 5 times throughout the year. You know, I think those exercises really help us sing better. Really? Thank you. Okay. You have to exercise your voice and get it ready to run because you are an athlete. And strive for optimum health, which means doing things like walking, doing things like drinking your water. The best thing in the world you can do is to drink water, and you need to drink half your body weight in ounces to really feel fully dehydrated, okay? Or hydrated, not dehydrated. Okay, let's keep going. How can we help? Saddle off again. He's such a great source. He says it's important to build voices rather than damage them. Okay, so identifying and eliminating vocal abuse or misuse. For my choir, that is median age of 87, I'm not going to pick things that the range is up to high B flats. We are doing a lot of middle voice work. We're doing soft, easy stretching when we exercise our voices. You know, don't do something that's going to harm your group. And again, this emphasis on vocal hygiene. And I would encourage you to go to the Mayo Clinic website and just type in vocal hygiene regimen and see what that says. And that'll lead you through those steps. And if you have questions about that, again, get my business card. I love answering questions. And spoken voice exercises. As we age, we tend to start to speak more monotone and using less of our range. So the mere idea of inflecting the voice, we call it optimal pitch. I tend to speak very, very low. This is not good for me to speak on my voice like this. And so I have to consciously think, if I am lecturing in my pedagogy class for 75 minutes, guess where I am talking? Guess where I'm talking in choral rehearsals? Y'all, I'm talking about taking care of your singers today, but I'm talking about taking care of you too. This is taking care of my voice because I want to sing for as long as possible. I'm a dramatic soprano. I'm going to be 50 next year. I'm hitting my stride right now, and I need to keep my voice in shape, okay? So all of you need to be doing the same thing. All right, so a lot of these slides have a lot of information, but appropriate exercise maintains the muscle function, the nervous and respiratory systems. Weight control and proper nutrition condition the body and voice. Flat pitch and wobble are often caused by lack of conditioning of the body. So get some flexibility exercises in your warm-up regimens. Your people need that. This is not irreversible, okay? GERD is more prevalent in older singers. I take medication every day for GERD. I have a contact granuloma on my left vocal fold. I sing with a bump on my vocal fold.
What is GERD?
GERD is gastroesophageal reflux disorder. Yes, and it is more prevalent in singers. It is more prevalent because what you do is you teach your singers to breathe very low, and after a period of time, that weakens the stomach sphincter. So when you go to sleep at night, that sphincter, that flap, is letting all that acid sit in your throat and burn the back of your vocal folds. Okay? So if you want to scare yourself, go look at some pictures on Google of the effects of GERD or acid reflux. That's the more common term on the vocal folds. Yikes. Okay, so age. We have more medications. My gosh, my dad's medicine drawer, it's amazing to me. Wow, it's a puzzle piece. But all those medications dry our voice. Okay, so we have to be conscientious of that and perhaps talk to our doctor about the side effects of those medications. Hormone replacement therapy, that can help women with hormonal imbalances, which might actually lower the pitch. So you might notice, oh, I can't sing my high B flat the way I used to sing that high B flat. And stress of life problems can affect the voice. For this type of singer in their 60s, 70s, 80s, perhaps a loss of spouse, right? Catastrophic things in their lives are happening. Stress can definitely affect the voice. And hearing loss is usually not severe enough to influence singing skills, and that's a good thing to remember, okay? So, all right, next slide here. So benefits of a multi-generational choir. Many voices, many experiences, that's a blessing. There are psychosocial benefits to singing in the choir. And a lot of times, I think of my father, I wish he could sing and was part of a choir. He just lost my mom in June. He needs a community around him. And the choir is that community for many people. Mentoring. I have a beautiful, I have a picture of her later, but Miss Carol, beautiful soprano in my choir, she was a professional singer, sang up and down the East Coast, musicals, Golden Age musicals. She is a mentor to younger people in the choir on good singing. And that's a blessing too. The community goes with the psychosocial, I think. And the physical benefits. It's like exercising the voice is exercising your body, okay? I always think facts are so interesting. The vital capacity, which means the amount of air you can expel out of your lungs, the greatest amount of air you can expel after taking the deepest breath, is the same in singers as it is in Olympic athletes. They've done studies, okay? So your pulmonary function as a singer is greatly stronger than the average Joe's. And our whole singing structure is built with muscle, okay? And so when I talked to the CEO of Westminster Towers, I said, absolutely, I'm gonna do this choir, because if those people don't use their voice, they are gonna lose it, okay? All right, so 4 types of mature singers, and this is research done by Sageetha Rayapti. And the first kind of singer is our lifer, and there's Miss Carol, okay, 87 years old. She's always sung. She's my hero. So professional musical theater singer, 87 years old, amazing musical ability. Okay, those are our lifers. Then we have our groupies. They never intended to sing alone, but they've sung in the choir for most of their life, and they enjoy it. Okay, and I'm many groupies. Most of my group is groupies. Then we have wounded warblers. I think of Miss Lou in my Towers choir, okay? This might be slight to significant vocal dysfunction. And what happened with Miss Lou is we were no longer meeting for church because of COVID, and she wasn't singing hymns. And because she wasn't singing hymns, she wasn't exercising her voice. And she said, Kristen, I have lost my range. I can't sing anymore. I said, well, join this choir. We'll get you back going again. And it's amazing. She has recovered. Now, not all of it, but she's working on recovering so much of her range. So they may have avoided using the voice, but now they want to. And then inexperienced that want to give it a try. And I personally, maybe some of you audition choir members, I don't. I feel like my choir loft is open to anyone. And y'all, I have people that cannot carry a tune. But somehow every Sunday, the Holy Spirit works. And it's gorgeous sound. It's gorgeous sound. Even though I have a tenor who's monotone, it's okay. It works out, okay? So we need to be feeding all 4 of these groups. So what are the strengths of having older singers? We need to see them as a benefit, okay? They tend to be more disciplined. Perhaps they have more time to be disciplined. They usually take criticism pretty well. They know themselves pretty well and their learning methods. They're eager to learn something new, and they thrive in a relaxed learning environment. I mean, we were just having so much fun in choir rehearsal last night because I was teaching them a gospel song, and I said, y'all, you can do all the things I tell you not to do in our classical style. You can scoop up to notes, you can start notes straight and add vibrato, and I was modeling for them, and they're like, okay, she's actually letting us do this. This is so fun. So they were eager to learn that new skill, okay, and slow, steady progress. Okay, next slide. Sorry if I'm talking so fast. We're going to give the mic to Dr. Mims.
So I'll chime in a little bit here, and as I mentioned, Grace is going to join Winthrop tomorrow. It's been a lot of fun for my college students to, for one, learn the church repertoire, but then also to engage with my choir that's mostly retired. Because they're mostly retired, then they've been able to come during the day to our rehearsals, and I intermix them, and they sit next to one another, and they find out about the people who have been singing for this long and such. So for my future music educators, it's been a really fun experience to do that as well. But benefits of seating arrangements, I'm going to do a demonstration of that in tomorrow's rehearsal about moving singers around, how that can assist. And that mostly what I'm going to be showing comes from Weston Noble, who is at Luther College, and about we're matching voices, not better or worse, but finding colors that might be similar, and how our choirs can be more in tune, and they can also sing freely and with their own voice, and that not having to hold back because they're having to be on the edge or whatever else. So spending the time, the benefits of getting to know each singer and each as much as you can in larger choirs. I know it's difficult, but spending that time is going to pay huge dividends on your intonation and being able to sing for longer periods of time, because there's going to be less fatigue as well. So I do advocate that, and I'll show you a little bit of that tomorrow. I forget what's next. It's maybe back to you. Yeah, that's you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here are some aging vocal issues. Breathiness, okay, in the sound. We call it hypofunction. That's the term James McKinney came up with, hypofunction, and hyper would be strangled voice. Loss of range, which we've kind of touched on, a tremolo, okay, and perhaps that's specifically for people with some neurological issues like Parkinson's, perhaps, I'm thinking. A change in vibrato rate, and usually for this age of singer, it's called a wobble, which is a too slow vibrato, okay? So normal vibrato rate is 5 to 7 oscillations per second, and it's so imperceptible that it just sounds okay. But for a wobble, we hear that fluctuation of pitch. I call it the B-52 bomber sound, right? Okay? Loss of breath control, which a lot of times is because it's a functional issue that our lungs are now becoming more conical instead of wider at the bottom, so we're holding less breath. But a lot of times it's a breath control issue, and we're going to walk you through that too. How much breath are you letting through the vocal folds? Vocal fatigue, which might mean, that they're doing something incorrectly with their laryngeal muscles. Pitch inaccuracy, which sometimes is that wobble too. So in trained singers, these symptoms are obviously less severe. All voices age, all muscles atrophy. This is my precious father. And he was an Iowa dairy farmer, and muscles for days. I mean, he's not a big guy, but oh my gosh, his biceps could crush. And he is aging. And if you notice the way he's standing right now, you see that stooped posture, and his muscles in his body are all atrophying. And I put this picture up just because I love him so much, but also the vocal mechanism is no different. And there are muscles throughout our whole vocal mechanism that also atrophy as we age, okay? So atrophy, there's a loss of 40%. Remember what that vital capacity means, how much your lungs can hold. In lungs from that 60-year span, from 20 to 80 years old. And the dimension of the rib cage is reduced. And I didn't know that until I heard Karen Brunson, who is the author of The Evolving Voice, actually do a presentation for NATS. And she was talking about how the rib cage actually becomes more vertical as we age, which I had no idea about. But obviously that would affect how much breath you are able to hold in your lungs. And my mom was a beautiful singer, and in the last 5 to 10 years of her life, she would always say to me, I just feel like I can't get a deep enough breath, and I can't sing as long as I used to, the unphrasing. So this was a common issue for her. Ossification, we have cartilage, many cartilages in our larynx, and those tend to start to ossify at the age of 25. There's only one bone in our larynx, which is at the top here, the hyoid bone, but those other cartilages tend to get a little stiffer as we age, which obviously affects how flexible we feel. So this alters our vocal fold adduction. That's a fancy word for closure, okay? And there's a loss of elastic and collagen fibers in our larynx. And weakness, that's a picture. Can we go back real quick? That picture of the vocal folds, they become weaker and stiffer. as we age, which obviously decreases volume. If we're looking at the vocal folds, the top of this picture is the back. Okay, so those points of prominence are the arytenoids, and the front is at the bottom. And so if this person was singing, the sound would be because the vocal folds are not all the way closed from front to back. Other voice issues is this tremor that happens with the older voice. What I love about Miss Carol, and I was thinking about her this morning, when I talk to her on the phone, she talks to me like this, right? That's my mature voice, that's 87 years old, right? But for a lot of people on the phone, can't you tell someone who's in their 80s and 90s by the way they speak? Yeah, you can tell it's an older person on the phone. The tremor is why you know that's an older person. Also, imprecise consonants. I'm always doing fast articulation exercises with my choirs because those impulses tend to slow down as we age, okay? This could also be laryngeal tension, and for many people, they talk in their vocal fry when they're older. And now don't I sound a little bit older using my vocal fry, right? Okay, so the good news. Keep calm, okay? So much of this can be reversed. So much. We don't have to be, oh, well, this is just the way it is. The great Helen Kemp said, body, mind, spirit, voice. It takes the whole person to sing and rejoice. Absolutely. And I try to remember that. Great Tony Bennett, he sang until he passed away, right? So what's happening? We're going to get to know the older voice through the next few slides. So how do we address these issues? As I said earlier, I think of it in this mentality. I'm teaching a voice lesson in a corporate setting. I do not have the training that Dr. Mims has, okay? I have my own special training as a voice teacher, and I try to go at it at that angle. You must employ some types of voice building in your rehearsal. You must do warm-ups, in my personal opinion. You need to walk before you run. Vocalization exercises during repertoire learning. If you're doing a flexible piece with a lot of consonants, you need to go back and do an exercise that fits that. Just like for my voice students at Winthrop, oftentimes I will grab sections of their repertoire and use it as a vocalese, okay? And then cool down at the end of rehearsal. And so we can go forward. One slide. Yes, thank you. So what can we do? Number one, keep them singing. Singing to maintain a voice is much less stressful than singing to build a voice. And again, I keep quoting him, but Robert Sadeloff, he's great. How do we do this? Okay, let's walk through this. First of all, you need to establish an environment of trust where your singers feel like it's okay to ask questions. I don't understand what you're saying. I don't know what we're doing. Okay, that's all right. It's okay to risk moments of frustration. Just because you can't do it this week doesn't mean that you can't do it next week. Remember my 87-year-old choir, median age, okay? So this is one of my favorite exercises for articulation, and I walk them through it, where we do one specific exercise for tongue, one exercise for jaw, and then one for soft palate, and it goes la 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 ya 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 ga 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 ga. And then they're like, I can't remember which consonant is first. Okay, so that's working their mind too. And just because they can't do it that week doesn't mean it won't be better down the road. So experiment with physical tasks that lead them out of their comfort zone. Habit breaker. My mom called me, Kristen, you are a professional habit breaker. I was like, oh, thank you. That's so nice. Okay, that's what I try to do as a voice teacher and a choral director. So we're going to talk you through, and Dr. Mims is going to interject some technical building exercises here, but we're going to talk you through the 6 facets of vocal building technique, which I think you should be addressing in your rehearsals. Posture, and it should probably go in this order: respiration, phonation, registration, resonance, and articulation. Okay, so let's start with posture first, and we are going to advance the next slide because I want to show you this picture, the full body warm-up, okay? So here we go through our 6 facets. Look at what happens to our structure as we age. We are fighting gravity that wants to pull us down. So one of my first exercises, it tends to affect the head and the torso, and of course the lumbar spine. But one of my first exercises, especially for my Westminster Towers choir, is to get them to go the opposite way, right? So I'm trying to correct by overcorrecting the opposite way and getting them to expand and open their rib cage. So part of this aging process, and this is what's happening to my dad, is that the muscles are atrophying and we have bad habits. You know, it's like the shuffle, like this, right? We can change that behavior. Loss of balance and gait. Okay, so let's go on to the next. The prescription is the 6 points of balance, okay? So we have our AO joint, which is the joint that connects your head to your spine. We've got to get that on top of our shoulders, right? And this would be incorrect. This would be hypo, and then hyper would be throwing the head back, but finding that center. And then the next would be arm balance, which has to do with the thorax, which is the chest cavity. And then our lumbar spine, making sure that our spine is underneath that torso. Oftentimes when we rock our hip joint forward slightly, which is number 4, that lengthens the lumbar spine. And then knees, okay, we all know not to lock our knees. And then we don't ever really think about the ankles or the feet, but they're important too. So working on gentle stretches throughout that. For my choir, especially at the towers, I might even ask them to, try to balance on one foot. That takes a lot of concentration on their part. But addressing that posture first. So hypo, not enough. Hyper, too much. And then always finding neutral in the center, walking through that. And if we go to the next slide, that specific exercise is from another book, which you need to know, which is What Every Singer Needs to Know About the Body, which really deals with the kinesthesia of our body. Okay, let's go on. I love this singer. If you do not know this singer, Thomas Quasthoff, German bass baritone. He was born with severe birth defects. And he has this enormous, gorgeous voice. Listen to him sing some German lieder, absolutely stunning. And people ask him, how do you have that big voice when you only stand this tall and you have no arms and your legs are very short? And he said, but I have a torso. Why should I not be able to sing, right? And if we address our torso, even in seated posture, with Dr. Mims we'll talk about in just a second, that makes perfect sense, right? Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, and this is Dr. Mims.
So I love hearing from a voice pedagogue, because we often, we're running and doing choirs all the time, and a lot of us either come from a conducting background or playing background, so it's amazing to hear from the voice teacher side of things, because we build voices in the whatever environment that we are in. That's part of our responsibility. So I come at it from the music educator side of things. I taught high school before I came and taught college as well. So I combined that then with my approach in school as well, in church. I'm a one-liner type of conductor, and I can usually say part of what we're going to test the students tomorrow when you see them. If I give them part of the phrase, we're going to see if they can do the rest of it. And one of those phrases is this one: middle third of the anatomy. So everyone, middle third of the anatomy. Front third of the chair. Scoot your forward. Proportions thereof. So I say that all the time, so that you can sit back, exactly. So I say that all the time to singers. So even as we are, I'm okay with you falling out of the chair if we're singing, but immediately we're in this middle third, they're like, oh yeah, here we are. So we can't have the alignment, because some of our singers may not be able to stand for long periods of time, or maybe we have a lengthy rehearsal. We stand most of the time probably in life, and they do not as much. So if they're seated, you can also have great alignment. So I use the word alignment better, more than posture in my classroom, just because it's sometimes they can end up being rigid. So we just have good alignment, and going back to what that's like as well. So.
Okay, so remember, and that's exactly what Jeremy was just saying, alignment and the torso alignment. When he says the third of your body, he's talking specifically about what Kostoff is saying. If I have a torso, I should be able to sing. So extending arms and stretching the rib cage, okay? And then the fear of running out of breath is more prevalent with mature singers. Well, if you're standing like this, of course your breath is not going to be able to come into your body. That's part of the problem. So getting them to create a new posture is a great way to start, okay? All right, let's keep going. Number 2 is respiration. So a decrease in the tonicity, okay, of support muscles, which also leads to a decrease in breath control. Do you all know the difference between breath support and breath control? It's okay if you don't. Breath support is the muscles that bring air into the body, okay, and take it out. And breath control is the valve, which allows the voice to work, right? How much breath you're allowing through the vocal folds. And so we talk a lot about diaphragm, and I'm not saying that diaphragm ain't there, okay? Sorry, I talk in double negatives sometimes for fun. But diaphragm is important, but diaphragm is only one part of the story. And as one of my former teachers said to me, there are no lungs in your diaphragm. Yes, exactly. The diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. And guess what holds your air, your lungs? I think the ribs, bless their little hearts, they get ignored all the time, okay? Because we think, breathe from the diaphragm, breathe. No, we're not breathing from the diaphragm. We are breathing with our lungs, right? We need to be careful about what we're saying. So if you think about the Italian term of appoggio, which is this all-around breath, that involves the ribs and the diaphragm, right? The diaphragm moves because the lungs are pushing it down. So if you talk to your choir about getting those support muscles correct in their mind, okay, they're going to probably fill their body differently than just thinking breathe with your diaphragm. That's very vague. Okay, and then obviously your abdominal muscles are the ones pushing the air out. So you need to feel the recoil, right? And that the diaphragm's moving up as those ab muscles are pushing the air out. So I often think of like a crunch muscle. I was going to do a challenge with my voice studio if we could do like 50 sit-ups a night and see if that affected our singing. We haven't done it yet. We probably should. So breath control. Once I take that beautiful air, how much am I letting through the valve? And for our older singers, a lot of times it's because the vocal folds are too open, and there's too much air escaping, or this is more dangerous, they're squeezing out the sound, okay? Which could be they're singing in the wrong voice type possibly too, and it's hyperfunctional. Okay, so there's a difference between support and control. So the pulmonary system, remember what I was talking about with Karen Brunson's research. The thorax becomes stiffer. Between our ribs are these intercostal muscles and cartilages, and those ossify as we age, and the thoracic spine changes. It becomes more concave. We can definitely see that with our aged population. And I just put a picture of the lungs because we should not forget that's where we hold our air, okay? All right, so aging effects on the lungs. The elasticity of the lungs goes down. Our vital capacity goes down. Our blood oxygen level goes down. So when we take breath, you know, the oxygen moves in our cells and then gets rid of the waste of the carbon dioxide, and then we exhale. Well, if we're not having as much oxygen in our blood, we're not getting rid of the carbon dioxide like we used to. And the risk of respiratory tract infection definitely goes up for our aged population. So breath support, this again reiterates what happens in the breathing in versus breathing out. And the emphasis is on how we control our exhalation, that we're just letting a little air through at a time, okay? And this is the support in the sound. Is unsupported sound. We have to sing with pressurized air. I think too often we're like, oh, singing needs to be, you know, nothing. You need to feel nothing. Well, there's got to be something holding you up, right? So there has to be tension in your abs, and there has to be pressurized air, even though pressure is a bad word, underneath the vocal folds, because we can't sing with unpressurized air, okay? So know your anatomy, know breath support, okay? Try not to say sing with your diaphragm too, because we are not singing with our diaphragm. The diaphragm is relaxed when we sing, right? It's relaxing. So here's a picture of breath support again, and these are the vocal folds on the right-hand side. So they're open on the left and closed on the right-hand side, singing and speaking. Okay, next slide. So I like to explain it like the little garden hose. Subglottic air versus vocal folds. Goldilocks effect, just right, okay? Just right. No, too little air, too much closure with the vocal folds. Too little closure, too much breath. Okay, so our goal is balanced and coordinated, and Dr. Mims has some exercises to walk us through about this. this is just a little ad here. If any of you suffer or have choir members that suffer with high blood pressure, listen to this podcast, because support and doing the right breathing mechanism that we do for singing actually has been seen to lower your blood pressure. So if you struggle with that, that's an interesting listen. I love to listen to NPR podcast. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is often what I do with my choirs. I have them blow out their birthday candle first, so they actually exhale first. And I feel like when they get rid of all their air, it automatically helps the body just open up to take that full breath. So I actually reverse that. So I say, blow out your birthday candle. This is something we do every week with the Towers Choir, and it helps that singer feel the elastic recoil of the lungs just opening and welcoming air in. Okay, and it also helps finding the down and out movement of the inspiratory muscles, of our rib costal muscles and our diaphragm going down. Okay, so I think this is you with SOVTs and
Great. And I had a colleague that often said, opposite of take a breath. So if we take a breath, as opposed to have a breath. Just terminology changing, we're allowing the air to enter us. I love the fact you're exiting first and then allowing that to come back. So everyone hum. This is your experiential. Yes, we are singers then as well. So SOVTs. So this is semi-occluded vocal tract. So anything that is closing off, like we say the word warming up, but these kind of exercises are literally warming up, and the vocal science behind it, because we're closing everything off, and all of this air in here and all of everything inside is actually warming up. So hum is an example of that. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow. You're going to do with us tomorrow at 12:30. But everyone's going to nice. I sing, you sing. Nice. Keep going. Up a half step. Do it again. And nice. I sing, you sing. That's all right. Nice. As we're doing so, speaking through the loft and just allowing the sound to happen. There's our pitch. Nice. We could do I start most rehearsals in chorale. I'll say we start, and they know they have an A memorized in them, and they just go, and they know immediately we're warming up with these SOVTs, semi-occluded, so we're closing everything off and allowing the sound just to be inside here and centering where the breath is. And there's a variety of things you can do with that. I'll give you another example of those tomorrow. And then the small intervals at the beginning of your warm-up. Don't expect your singer to already be running the marathon when they walk in the door. So I walk into too many rehearsal spaces that a warm-up is either walking music, it's welcoming, I'm getting the stuff, and it's just all mindless, as opposed to having an intention of, all right, we're going to start slow, we're going to start low, mid-range down, small intervals. Then eventually I'll start expanding and such. So anything that's easy on the breath and on the voice at the beginning, like these as well. She put on your voiced consonants, so everyone go nice. So I will use things and be able to engage those voiced consonants that also at the beginning nice and easy, low range, or and do something of that nature that helps us then get the sound forward and easy and low range. You put homework. You have homework as well.
Just that I would encourage them to do that work outside of rehearsal.
Exactly. So she's giving her singers then also, because it's the building of the voice, not just the microcosm of our 1 hour rehearsal a week. Maybe you have longer than that. But the more that we're doing that and training that, then we have homework as well. So awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I was in a lesson this morning and I was working with a student and I said, okay, you've got to do that every time you sing. You got to do it when you're with Dr. Mims in choir. You've got to do it in here. You got to do it in the practice room, because we're trying to break a habit. And so that's what I meant by homework, okay? So I just want to talk to you about glottal onset. Now, glottals, you might think bad word there too, but oftentimes for my choir at church, I'll be warming and doing a flexibility exercise and they're just like blowing air. Right? So they're ha, 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 and I've got to correct that. And so a glottal, I want to emphasize, because Manuel Garcia got really just raked over the coals for this when he said this, but cua the glottis, which means stroke of the glottis, which means very light, It is never the laryngeal cough. It is never that. So it's just emphasis on getting the vocal folds to close, because there are muscles that close the back of the vocal folds, okay? And those get weaker as we age. So encouraging your singers a little of that a day is not a bad thing, okay? It's going to encourage that stronger sound, because that is the pressurized air. Pressurized air. Can you imagine my 50-piece choir all singing that way? It's just going to be blown air, and we don't want that. Okay, so phonation challenges. This is how your vocal folds should actually look. They should be pearly white like that. That means you are adequately hydrated, okay? So we like to see them glistening and white. So atrophy, those are beautiful vocal folds. Yes, beautiful. So atrophy of muscles, and gosh, so many of these facets, it's just like one corrects the other. So a lot of what I just said is here, right? So adduction, that's the fancy word for closure. I just talked about it with glottals, right? And breath control, the SOVTs. Those are great to do because that regulates the flow of air that's coming out of your vocal folds, okay? And I would just include one more thing about SOVTs. I forgot to put his name in the PowerPoint, but you could go on YouTube tonight and watch this 6-minute little video with Ingo Tietze at the University of Iowa. He's the man who came up with the SOVT exercises. And what I equate them with is warming up your hands, like slapping your hands together and warming them up, okay? And imagine your vocal folds being that, because you're damming back pressurized air that goes back and hits the vocal folds. So it's an easy way to get the voice moving. I will tell you that for most voice lessons, I do the same as Dr. Mims. I start with humming first, okay? Hypofunction or hyperfunction, laryngeal anatomy changes, that's fine, you can advance there. Laryngeal anatomy changes here. The thyroid and cricoid cartilages ossify and laryngeal joints stiffen as we age. But working through these things will help with that. And the vocal fold structure, we call them folds, not chords, and never chords spelled like a chord like you're building do, mi, so, please. They are 5-layer structure. I'm from the Midwest again, and I like to think about a Jell-O salad, right? It moves a lot at the top, like those beautiful Midwest, Jell-O salads, the different layer of colors, right? Okay, and so it's really jiggly at the top, and it doesn't jiggle so much at the bottom. That's actually your vocal folds. So the muscle is at the bottom. That's called the TA, or thyroarytenoid, okay? And then the upper 2 layers that you see if you would ever go to an ENT are the movers, okay? So we call them folds, okay? And what happens sometimes with our aging voice is that the anterior, which is actually down here, starts to bow and viscosity increases. So it's, again, more gummy inside. Our mucosal layer at the top gets gummy, and it's harder to move the vocal folds. They feel like they can't move as quickly. The internal layers of the vocal folds lose collagen, hyaluronic acid. I'm putting that on my face right now to make me not look so old. So that actually decreases as we age. And muscular changes, neuromuscular changes in the strength of my vocal folds, the speed of my vocal folds, the contraction of my vocal folds, and the fatigue resistance. Well, if the speed is going down, you are no longer going to feel like that B flat is so easy to sing, because the higher the speed, the higher the pitch, okay? So this is why for many of our older singers, they feel a loss of range. Don't be scared to visit an ENT, okay? Vocal hygiene is an important part of life. I go see an ENT every fall, so he can look at that little bump and say, you're good to go. And stretching exercises, onsets, flexibility, all those things. If you're not going to use it, you're going to lose it. So the aid of the ENT SLP. Registration challenges, loss of range, I just talked about that. Feeling kind of stuck. That could be because you possibly might have laryngeal paralysis, maybe. But it could also be hormonal changes. As estrogen lowers in the female voice, it lowers the singing voice. But testosterone lowers and it elevates the lowest pitch. So you may have sung bass too, And all of a sudden, you're like, I cannot sing bass 2 notes anymore. I can't hit those low notes. So it's a loss of range in both directions, possibly, because of hormonal changes. So stretching exercises, Dr. Mims is going to talk to you about this and where to stretch first.
Great, so I'm looking at time. I'm going to take you through some more warm-ups tomorrow with the choir, but I always start, as I mentioned, lower range, and then I'll start mid-range and going down, and then we'll do some, all right, so just drop out when you have to, and I'll do a variety of exercises that are easy, taking us all the way down here, before that we take the journey upwards. And then as I'm doing so as well, so we'll just do one as where we are going upwards. I do a lot of movement. So I like, it's okay for your singers to engage an arm, to engage a body part, because it's also freeing the rest of the body as we're doing so. So I sing, you sing, ni-ah, your turn. Ni-ah. And I just engage as we're doing that, ni-ah, and we might plie, everyone's like, I'm not a dancer. That's okay, go up and down. Whatever that is in your life that you can be, and we do lots of movement with the hand, because then all of a sudden, as you move the hand, all this moves as well. So we're engaging, because it's difficult to get inside our bodies and be able to change all of this, but we can do something outwardly that often we can show that inwardly as well. But the basic adage is, go down first, please. Don't go up here. And I walk into rehearsal rooms and like singing high B flats immediately. Let's not do that to our wonderful friends, please. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, body movement. Last night in rehearsal, I was having them experiment with lifting the soft palate, right? And so kinesthetically, I was just having them do this as we were doing our vowel work in our rehearsal, and it made a wow difference in the sound, okay? So moving from speech to singing, I like to think about it like walking. This is speech, and then now I'm running as a singer. Oftentimes, and I've really started to use this more and more because of my own work with my current teacher, is doing what I call breath rides. Okay, and those can start low and go high. So, and what I love even more is yole-hoo, right? Inflecting the voice, yodels back and forth between chest and head. For everyone, that can be your male falsetto too. Okay, let's keep moving here. Resonance challenges, loss of carrying power. I just feel stuck in my sound. I feel like I can't make a loud sound. Part of that could be your space. So let's look at what that space looks like. It is a tractable track. Your vocal folds are down here and it exits at your lips. This is called the pharynx, okay, or throat. This is called the oral cavity or your mouth. This is your soft palate. I had a voice teacher tell me that the space inside your mouth was not under your conscious control. And I was like, okay, everything I have learned up to this point has been a lie. No, that is, just like I was doing with my choir last night, that is your brain telling your body how to change that tractable track. We have a throat that is movable. Otherwise, we couldn't sing different pitches and notes and all that, okay? So that's aided by our articulation. So understand your anatomy. The solutions, the voice consonants, more power behind the sound, pressurized air, don't forget that. Aid for the personal resonance. That soprano I was working with this morning, we were talking about nasal consonants, and she wants to be a choir director. Well, why would you want to do that with your choir? Well, it makes them feel the sound more forward. That's called the private resonance of the singer. Placement doesn't really exist. That's a function of if your articulators are in the right place. But we can sure talk placement. I say placement, it's not a dirty word. Okay, but it's a personal resonance. I am singing forward and in front of my face, and that's a good thing. I'm bypassing my throat. Great. Okay, lip trills, activating support. If the lip trill stops, that means the breath pressure has stopped. So I love lip trills. Some people can't do that, so you can have them do a raspberry, which he just did, okay, or something else. Okay, let's go on to articulation challenges. Loss of tonicity in the muscles used to articulate your mouth, your tongue, your soft palate, your jaw, even your teeth. All of those are articulation processes. Understand your anatomy. I know it's a little morbid, but I tell my students sometimes, you do understand when we die and disintegrate, our jaw falls off our skeleton, right? And they look at me like, what? And I said, that's really important for us to understand because a drop jaw is a forced jaw. But it's important to remember that the jaw is held with these little rubber bands of the TMJ, right? And it should be a relaxed jaw because it's hanging off my skeleton with rubber bands connecting it. So that, understand your anatomy, I cannot say it enough. So exercises that isolate certain parts of the articulatory process. And I say this with my diction kids all the time. So many times singers understand the sound, and I always say this when I start teaching diction. One of the reasons I wanted to teach diction is I felt like my training in diction was not very good, because this is what happened in a voice lesson. My singer would say, or my teacher would say cello in Italian. I'd say ge, but he wasn't teaching me how to create that sound away from him. I was a parrot, right? So now I understand the function of voiced consonants. Where is my tongue? Where is it touching? A labiodental consonant means my teeth are to my lips. What kind of sound is that? And if I put my air through that, right? Understand your anatomy. So, love that. Okay, vibrato. Let's go on, okay? We'll talk about vibrato. So let's go on to the next slide, if we can. We are dealing primarily with slow vibrato, which means we have got to encourage flexibility exercises because it's just, I don't want to say the word lazy, but it's like lazy muscles that we've got to get moving again, okay? So sometimes it's because of insufficient vocal fold resistance. Our SOVTs could help us with that. Sometimes it's even tongue tension. I'm working with a young singer right now who has a pretty pronounced wobble, and I'm noticing it's base of tongue. There's so much tension there. So tongue trills would be great. La 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 la. Functional exercises like that can help us with the vibrato rate. Okay. So I'm sorry, this is such a small slide, but engaging the support muscles, you must do some kind of fast moving staccato, and it really makes us use our abdominal muscles. Okay, messa di voce, the swell of the voice. Increase of tonicity with those abdominal muscles. Going down first, voiced consonants, arpeggiation, tongue stretches, tongue trills, vocalises that engage the whole body in movement, and even repertoire. You shouldn't be singing all slow things, okay, with your church choir. Try to do some variety of music. Let's go on to the next slide. So the dividing line, serving singers and the choir. And let's go on. And I don't audition my choir, but some of my friends do. And what I found in my journey, this is my first Sunday with my choir, and it's grown to about 40 to 50 members. Self-awareness is usually good, right? Making our people self-aware of their bad habits that need to be changed, and redirecting, okay? So, and can you create new other opportunities for for your singers? Perhaps that is extra programming that you can do, or I have some of my choir members who sing both in the Towers choir and my church choir. But more than anything, just stress, make a joyful noise. And I try to tell my people every single week, like I write prayer requests after our rehearsal and email them out. And last night I said, I love you all. Just remember I love you, and you're all so precious, and you're all so important to our ministry. And I feel personally that a person who feels loved and appreciated will go the distance for you. And I don't know if some of you feel the same way. But Dr. Mims, do you have anything to add?
So to go back when she was speaking about auditions, I'll come full circle. Tell you a little story about when I was teaching high school. Now this is not an aging voice, this was a high school instrument. When she was, I call voices instruments because that's what they are. She was literally the worst thing you've ever heard in your life. And you're dealing with this individual that walks into the ensemble and you're going, okay, so there's this voice, and I had a colleague to come, and she was working with my choir before I was going to UIL contest I taught in Texas, and she says, you can't let her go. When she heard the choir, she said, your choir's gonna get an entire rating lower just for that one singer. So then I was trying to negotiate, what am I doing with the entire ensemble with this one singer? And then I pulled her music aside, and she had marked every single note, every single thing I've ever said in class was in her music. because she was that prepared, trying very, very difficult, but she came into the classroom with a learning disability as well and trying to negotiate, figuring out what that's like. So for that opportunity, I found a role for her, and she was the page turner for the pianist, and she was so proud that she got to sit next to the pianist because she knew the music. I said, you have a job for you, because this is, you know the music better than anyone, and she turned the pages beautifully. Fast forward next year, she walked into my advanced choir because the counselor said that's the only class that she can fit into, and now you have to deal with this. And all my singers looking. She walked into the room. Oh, okay. So I began to work with her. We had a little signal. I point at my ear, and she realized, okay, I gotta hang back. And then she started realizing. One day I was working with my sopranos at 7:30 in the morning, because when you teach high school, that's when you teach, right? That's what it is. Working with them, and they're singing these super high Cs for all state rehearsal, and this individual, Jamel, was across the room, and she all of a sudden matched pitch at the super high C, and I went. So I found that her 3 good notes were above the staff. She could sing G to C above the staff only. And that's where I was, so I pulled her over from the alto section. Like, now you're over in the soprano section, and you're over here, and she knew those are her good notes, and she would open up and sing those, and then she started coming back. So I had her for 4 years. When I taught, by her 4th year, she sang a solo with solo ensemble. She got a 2, and it was a great success for her. Then after that, she said, I still want to sing. Can I be in your church choir? So she came and started coming to our little church in El Paso, where I was, bilingual congregation with my dad, and she knew my signals. You know, she and I just had our little system where she would come back into many years. I won't tell you how many years, but many years later, my mom still does that same church choir. This is many years. She still goes every Sunday, and she sings in that church choir because she's found her voice of how she can be in. So finding a way that we can still employ our volunteers, they don't have to be there. We find a way that they can be involved. Now I teach different kinds of organizations. Across the street at Winthrop, I'm dealing with the university choir. That's a different animal, and how I approach it. However, I still approach my church choir. We're still going to have excellence. We're still going to have beautiful sounds, but I'm going to approach them in a different manner as well about when they walk into the door, perhaps. So as I mentioned, I came as a pianist and a violinist, and she mentioned that she didn't have a good teacher in diction. I came to voice later on in life, so I also then have a heart for people who come to voice later in life as well, and they've decided they're going to come into that kind of environment. So that's just part of my background. I'm going to take you through some warm-ups tomorrow with the Winthrop Choir, who's going to be here, and you're going to get to sing and engage, and so come prepared at 12:30 to be able to do that also. So I think we might have some questions as well. We're nice and quiet now. We have lots of information. Dr. Wonderlich, thank you for sharing all of that. It's awesome.
I do have business cards on the table. I have my business cards over on the table, and I can get you in contact with Dr. Mims, but I just put our emails here. And I do at the back of this, also at the next slide, these are all my sources, which are a lot of the sources I've given you already. And again, I love answering questions. I might not always have the answer, but I will be willing to look for you. And if you do have just a couple moments to fill out that questionnaire I put in the tables, I would greatly appreciate that. Does anyone have questions? I know that was a lot of information. Thank you.